This is Torch columnist Sean Radican, and today I'm joined by WSU and Beyond Wrestling owner Drew Cordero. Drew, how you doing today?
I am busy. I'm very busy, but that's a good problem to have. I like I like putting a lot on my plate.
Yeah, you got a lot of been doing a lot lately, and big just to let people know, we're going to be talking about Point of No Return at FET Music. That's September 15th in Providence, Rhode Island. Doors at 3:30. LookMaNoFans.com for tickets, and we're going to get to that later. But you've been busy lately. I want to just give some WSU talk in.
Sure.
Just to get people an update on what's going on in the WSU universe. I know you had the Uncensored Rumble last month, and it seemed like the show was a little snake-bitten. Athena suffered an injury at the secret show. Your champion was unable to make the show. I guess, what was that like for you? Have you dealt with something like that before, where you kind of had to flip things around and stuff like, especially with you had basically used the Queen and King tournament to build to that match?
I feel like with every WSU show that we've run, there's been some sort of major snafu that's been out of our control. Especially when you look back to February when we ran an Ultraviolent Affair during that huge snowstorm when we probably should have canceled the show. But at least on those two cards, we were able to deliver the two main events in Lufisto versus Mercedes Martinez in the Uncensored Rules match and the original contest between Jessica Havoc and Athena. It's one of those situations where you have to be flexible. You have to be able to adapt to whatever is dealt to you. And it wasn't easy, but at least with the secret show, I was able to take a look firsthand at some new talent that I had confidence in, as far as being able to not necessarily replace a main event, but at least be able to provide other matches on the card. And I think that in that regard, both Barbie Hayden and Santana Garrett, who were called upon, did phenomenal jobs. And I would anticipate seeing both of them back in WSU sooner rather than later.
Is Barbie Hayden the one that did the Ring of Honor shot recently?
Yeah, I believe she wrestled Athena in Texas, and she wrestled Jules Malone on the Uncensored Rumble match, which Jules Malone was also somebody that debuted at the secret show that was impressive. And Santana Garrett went one-on-one with Sassy Stephanie. So, again, obviously neither of those matches were the main event that we had promised to deliver. But I'm certainly, it's a situation where it's out of our hands. Yeah. We did the best we could with what we were dealt, and the fans were very understanding of the situation. I mean, like, injuries happen in wrestling. It could, if it didn't happen at the secret show, it could have happened at a show the week before. So that totally sucks. And as far as Havoc's travel issues, it's 100% legitimate. So she's just relocated to another part of the country. Her car broke down. She didn't have many people that she could call upon at 5 a.m. in order to be able to get her to her red-eye flight. So it sucks. I hope that we can make up the match at some point. But at least moving forward, we did crown a new number one contender with Lexus versus Nevaeh at Uncensored Rumble. So Lexus is going to be getting her shot against Jessica Havoc one-on-one finally before any other contenders.
Now, you do the secret shows. What is the purpose of the secret show?
Well, I mean, we've got multiple purposes in mind when we come up with, these ideas. And one is I wanted to be able to try and create a little bit more of an intimate setting because a lot of times when we do our pay-per-views, we have to adhere to such a strict timeline that we are unable to provide the fans with a meet and greet, which is usually fairly common at the women's shows. So by doing the secret show, we don't have any sort of format that we have to stick to. At the first secret show, we had an intermission that went almost an hour, and nobody was unhappy with it because all of the fans got to interact with the wrestlers, on a one-on-one basis. If they wanted autographs or pictures, they had the opportunity to do that. The secret show was also extremely beneficial because I was able to scout talent firsthand that I hadn't seen before in person. And honestly, it's one thing to watch something on YouTube to get a feel for it, but most often times when wrestlers are submitting links, like, it's fan cam footage, it's not very close, it's difficult to get a read on their mannerisms. Yeah. You're getting the bare bones of a match. So to be able to see them in person, it's an entirely different scale in which I get to evaluate the talent. And then not only that, we've really been pushing streamwsu.com. So by doing these secret shows, it allows us to create some exclusive content to try and get more eyeballs on what I think is an incredible video platform service. And as far as women's wrestling goes, like, we are certainly pioneers in that department.
But besides the names you mentioned, was there anyone else that impressed from that, coming out of the secret show or the Uncensored Rumble 6?
Yeah, I mean, another person that I hadn't named yet was Taylor Hendricks, and even though she came up in New England, which is where I'm from, I had never seen any of her work until she had joined up with TNA, and I thought that, some of these wrestlers were going to be difficult to deal with, like, fresh off TV, like, oh shit, like, I'm back on the indies. That wasn't the case at all. So she had a super positive attitude, really easy to work with, definitely was able to nail a lot of the little things because she's got that TV training. So definitely looking forward to work with her in the future as well. But I mean, between her, Barbie Hayden, and Santana Garrett, those are the three standouts. Not, I mean, the carload of wrestlers that we brought in from Canada with Jody DeMilo and Zandra Bale, they did really good too. Jules Malone did awesome. I'm pretty sure, that we'll have her back sooner than later. So there were a lot of good wrestlers that I hadn't had the opportunity to see before that will be in the fold in WSU. So if, for whatever reason any women's wrestlers are listening to this, like, the secret shows are definitely a good opportunity to try and get on. And again, the secret shows are sort of like a cross between a live show and then a Beyond Wrestling taping, where because we don't have a format, we can experiment. If we did have a wrestler on the last secret show that honestly wasn't in any position to be competing on it, and at least the fans were respectful and understood, like, okay, like, this is where we're trying out our new talent. It's better that this happened here than live on iPay-per-view. So, you live and learn, and, if that wrestler gets feedback from some of the other peers that were in attendance, and hopefully she'll improve her craft and get to the point where one day she could be invited back.
Now, the Uncensored Rumble, it looks like that's nearly ready to be released in the near future.
Yeah, we're actually doing a third edit. We did the first edit live when it was presented on CGWIPPV.com for the MP4. That's available on SM.
Smart Mark.
Let's try that again. Yeah, Smart Mark. There's too many platforms, too many distributors. It's way too confusing. I mean, it is what it is. It's good to be able to give fans an option. If a fan for whatever reason doesn't want to, watch the 14-day VOD on RF Video and instead they want to buy the MP4 on Smart Mark Video, it's cool that they have that option. But the MP4 that's available on Smart Mark Video is the second edit, and now RF Video is completing a third edit, which will be used for the DVD and the Blu-ray. So we do have all of the artwork set for that. I would imagine that should be ready to roll within the next week or two.
Cool. Now, before we move on to Beyond Wrestling, I know you guys, WSU, is part of the female fight season. I guess, can you talk a little bit about that and what that's all about in October?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an awesome idea. If all of the different organizations that are involved are pooling their resources to promote everybody's shows, let's say somebody's a fan of Shimmer Wrestling, but they live in the Northeast, so they've never had an opportunity to attend Shimmer Live. Well, maybe for some reason they hadn't heard about WSU. So if Shimmer's promoting the WSU event, then maybe that person will, give WSU a chance. But I think it's awesome, and I think that more organizations should be looking to work together instead of working against each other. And I mean, it's not like we're doing doubleheaders or, like the National Pro Wrestling Day equivalent of a women's wrestling show. But at the same time, like, by passing that spotlight around, like a company like Bellatrix over in the UK, or AIW, who's got their Girls Night Out doubleheader coming up. Hopefully those organizations will get more eyeballs on them, and it'll benefit not only the women's wrestlers that are going to have an opportunity to compete multiple times in a short, in a month, which doesn't happen. The women's wrestling shows are usually very spread out. Not only is it going to benefit the women's wrestlers involved, but hopefully the fans too. And if it's successful, which I don't see how it couldn't be, hopefully this will become an annual thing.
Yeah, it's very cool that everyone's working together.
I mean, honestly, I don't think that we would have had the opportunity to book some of the international wrestlers that we have scheduled for Blood and Thunder, like Saraya Knight or Nikki Storm, had it not been for the fact that fight season is happening and, these wrestlers are going to be stateside doing a tour. So that's another huge advantage, is we have the opportunity to bring talent to the area that have never competed there.
How'd you come up with the name for the show? I have to ask that.
I don't really know. But one day I was just Googling and like the phrase blood and thunder came up and I was like, is this an actual phrase? And I looked it up and it's like an idiom for like a big spectacle.
Oh.
So I don't know. I thought it kind of would fit in with an October Halloween motif and, I guess I can't guarantee that there's going to be any blood on the show. You never know what's going to happen. But if there's ever a match that we've put together for a special attraction where it would be a distinct possibility, Saraya Knight versus Mickey Knuckles for the first time ever in a no disqualification match. I don't know, man. There could be some blood. I hope not. But it seems like a distinct possibility.
Yeah, you guys, you have a big chance here to, you got some big matches announced. Allison Kay, Kimberly, Jenny Rose against Nikki Storm. You mentioned Saraya Knight versus Mickey Knuckles, and of course Jessica Havoc versus Lexus. Are you hoping that this could kind of be a platform to give you guys an opportunity to really launch yourselves and gain some momentum heading into the end of the year?
Definitely. And, we're going to be looking to run more frequent live events, not only through the end of the year, but also in 2014. So, we're loading up this car. I think every promotion involved with female fight season should be trying to, I guess steal the show, but more so than that, like, you want to have the best card out of anybody. And that's a lot to compete with. So, it's friendly competition though. You know what I mean? And that's how it should be. If there, if Shimmer or Shine puts on a better show than us, like that's awesome because that means that we've tried our hardest. And if they're able to do better, like, holy shit, that means they really knocked it out of the park. That's really good for women's wrestling. So, in general, this entire month-long event should be used to just elevate women's wrestling, and I'm happy that we were invited to be a part of it, because I can guarantee under old management that wouldn't be the case. So,
now, Voorhees is in Voorhees, New Jersey.
It is going to be Voorhees. It's going to be a doubleheader with CZW Cerebral. It will be available on iPay-per-view at czwippv.com, and I believe it's 3:30 doors for that, 4 p.m. bell time. We're going to have tickets on sale starting, I want to say Monday, September 16th. Is that a date? They'll be available at lookondofans.com, although we are in the process of setting up a tried and true WSU store to be able to sell physical merchandise as well as digital downloads, individual VOD streams, and that'll be in conjunction with Stream WSU. So, we're always working on different projects. We've got a lot to work with, and the fact that we're constantly growing different revenue streams for WSU, I'm really happy with. So, blood and thunder, man. we get some more good matches to announce too. So I'm really happy with the way that card's shaping up.
And that's I don't know if we announced the date, but that is October 12th in Voorhees. All right, now let's a lot of Beyond Wrestling to talk about. First of all, I know you did some studio tapings at the Chikara Wrestle Factory and the CZW school. Any good stories coming out of those tapings that you recently did?
Yeah, you know what? I think a lot of times when we do, especially when we do the clinics at the Wrestle Factory, it's the type of situation where it's different than a studio taping, because when we do our studio tapings, like, everybody shows up, we assign matches, then we tape matches. We'll tape them in clusters, and then, like, let's say we tape 5 or 6 matches at a time. We'll take a short break, go get some food, come back, and tape more matches. So there's not a lot of room to breathe. When we do the clinics with Mike Quackenbush at the Wrestle Factory, they are very long days, but they are extremely efficient. So, for instance, everybody showed up to the Wrestle Factory around 10 a.m. By 10:30, everybody was in ring doing warm-ups. That lasted about 30 to 45 minutes. From there was about 3 to 3.5 hours of all in-ring technique, which is really long. A lot of times when you do clinics, like, between the warm-ups and the in-ring stuff, it's limited to about 2 hours.
Yeah.
Once we were done with the in-ring stuff, we broke to go get some food. We came back. Quack did a lecture, and then, we opened it up for questions. At that point, matches were assigned. Some competitors were given specific instructions, other were not. But after every match, everybody that was participating in the match was brought to the back and then given direct feedback by Quack. So he was on hand to able to evaluate all of those matches as well. So, even though we ran from about 10 a.m. to 10:30 at night, that's really above and beyond what you'd normally get if you were to just do a seminar with a wrestler. And I think what's so cool about it is that we've made it accessible literally to everybody. So, I mean, any success stories coming out of the weekend is, long story short, I think at a lot of these clinics, guys think that it's going to be like a fast track, like, oh shit, like, I'm going to work for Quack, I'm going to get booked for Chikara. And so, like, guys that may not be ready may come and participate. And I feel like, oh, man, that kind of sucks. Like, they're probably not going to get as much out of it because they're not coming to it with the right motivation. But there were 6 wrestlers that came from NYWC, maybe even more than that. Might have been 7 or 8. I'm going to try and name all of them if I can.
Okay.
Alvin Alvarez, Brandon Watts, Blake Morrissey, Stockade, Jesse Vane, Ryan Rush. I'm forgetting somebody. Shit. But all those guys did really, really good. So good, in fact, that we invited them the following day when we did the taping at the CGW school, and we actually put them up against some of our wrestlers. And I gotta say, like, I was super impressed, because I had never seen any of those guys before, but I would anticipate that we will be seeing more guys from NYWC on the Beyond Wrestling side of things. So that's certainly a success story coming out of the weekend.
So I guess how long does it take to start some of these matches coming out on YouTube?
I mean, our schedule right now, we have so much. It's so funny. I was watching the most recent PWG release, their anniversary show from August, and then I was like, oh, I wonder what other DVDs they have out from this year. And then I went and looked, and I was like, oh man, like they only run like 8 to 10 shows a year.
Yeah, they only have 4 shows out right now.
Right, and then so it's like, okay, that's 8 to 10 must-see shows a year. And then I started thinking, like, well, how many shows have we done so far this year? Like, and then I started adding it up, and it's like, oh my God, between the live shows, the studio tapings, the clinics, now we're doing these monthly Church of Providence shows, plus, what I have a hand with in WSU. It's like, I'm responsible for creating like a quarter of all of the independent wrestling content that's out there right now. But to answer your question as far as how long it's going to take to get out, this week at youtube.com/Beyond Wrestling, we have the pre-show from We Care a Lot, as well as the pre-show from Americanrana. And then from there, we will start releasing matches from our taping that we did on Sunday, July 14th. So we've got 3 full tapings that will go up after Point of No Return, as well as starting to release the Church of Providence footage, as well as showcase matches from an organization called NEFW that runs out like Western Massachusetts and Connecticut, because they did some Beyond Wrestling showcase matches. So I would anticipate by November, maybe. I mean, we really got a huge back catalog, and we're trying to get it up. Our turnaround time has definitely improved as far as the online stuff goes, because, I mean, just a couple months ago, we were releasing stuff from December, and then from February of the previous year. So we're definitely making sure to get it up. But sometimes what happens is we'll sit on footage for a little bit, and then, like, oh, man, like, all of a sudden this one wrestler got hot. So it's like, okay, cool. Like, it's a good thing that we didn't release this beforehand, because now that this guy's got a little bit of buzz, if we pull the trigger on it, it's going to get that many more eyeballs on it. I think a great example of that is we had Drew Gulak versus Andrew Everett, which was taped after the Best of the Best. But Andrew Everett has had such an incredible summer that when we put up his match last week, it was a lot more high profile than it would have been. Not that he was a worse performer 3 months ago. The match is still awesome. So that's pretty cool that we have that quality control. We're able to sort of pick and choose when stuff comes out, because it's not like it played in front of a live audience where, let's say, for, the We Care a Lot DVD that we're just wrapping up production on today. That was what I was doing before, I called in for the interview. That happened in real time in front of a live audience. So people know, like, oh shit, like that show happened in June. Well, It's September. How come I'm not watching it yet? Whereas there's not that same level of time sensitivity with some of our studio taping stuff, because people don't know when it was recorded.
Right. I like the Vine. I think it was it JT Dunn who put out a Vine of Darius Carter versus DJ Hyde. I was like, oh, let me see what this is all about. And I was like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, Darius, I really am not happy with Darius's behavior overall. I am not allowing him to participate in any live shows going forward, and I know that you are skeptical of that, so I guess we will see a Point of Return. He is still allowed to come and participate at the studio tapings, because they are always open invitation for any wrestlers that want to get involved, but I have not made it easy for him in terms of the opponents that he has had to wrestle. We put him against Jonathan Gresham back in July, who stretched the shit out of him, and we put him against DJ Hyde last weekend, who...
That was great.
I don't know. What more do you need to say? Sleeper suplexes, lariats. Like, I love DJ. DJ is a really, really underrated wrestler. He's very smart. He's very cerebral. So, But he's a bit of a bruiser, so it was awesome to see him beat the shit out of Darius Carter too.
That was a great find. It's like there's a Darius Carter match I'll watch. All right, let's talk about Americanrana. You know, going into July 21st. What were your feelings the day of the show? And you know, obviously things turned out well, but you know, did you expect things to turn out that well as it did on?
No. I didn't, no. And it's so funny because day of, I'm a nervous wreck day show. I'm a pretty nervous guy in general.
High energy.
Yeah, I guess. But day of show, I was very calm, and the guys were coming up to me and were like, "Is something wrong?" And I just had this sense of like, for every other show that we've run up until this point, there's always been something that I've wanted to do in terms of being able to promote it or get the word out there, and I feel like we've missed the mark. And then it's just like, okay, like, you know, we did 100 fans in Bridgewater. It's like, is it because of the location? Like, is it because we didn't flyer the right spots? Is it because, you know, the newspaper didn't write an article on us? Like, what is it? You know, is it the lineup? But I felt like with the lineup we had for July, with FET being able to work with us in terms of helping out with promotions, in terms of our online presence, just everything clicked. And I knew day of show, like, whether or not we do good or we do bad, this is absolutely our best foot forward. So I'm not going to be disappointed with it. But Americanrana was something special. And I feel like it's almost become like a cliche way to describe shows, but it's because I don't really know how to better articulate what went down that day. It was magic. Like, everything was perfect. And even the guys that I was kind of skeptical is like, man, like, maybe they're not deserving to be on this card. Man, did they prove me wrong. And the guys that we brought in, that hadn't worked with Beyond Wrestling before, like Kevin Steen, like Masada, they were unbelievable. And a lot of those guys actually followed up with me after the show, and they had very complimentary things to say. And like one of the reasons that I knew that Americanrana was a success was like when I reached out to Roderick Strong to book him for Point of No Return. You do like the booking inquiry email, and like a lot of times guys won't even get back to you.
Right.
And it was just like, oh yeah, like Eddie said it was awesome. Like, this is how much I need. I'm there. It's like no negotiating. It's like, oh my God, like that. And it's cool to be able to start to build that reputation because, dude, for such a long period of time, people were like, is it backyard wrestling? Is it fetish wrestling? Like, what is Beyond Wrestling? Because as much as things change in the world of professional wrestling, it's still based very heavily on a lot of traditions. And the idea in some ways of like removing, you know, if that was the way it was perceived, people perceived our studio tapings as us removing fans, which wasn't the case. It was just we were altering the way that fans were able to interact with our shows. But with Americanrana, like, if there was anybody that had any sort of confusions or questions as far as what we were capable of, I think that we blew away their expectations, just as I blew away my own personal expectations. So,
yeah, I mean, you had the big names coming in, you matched them up with the local guys, but it was some of the matches on the undercard that really set the tone, and, I got in a little late because the line was so long, but, you know, the 4-way looked like it was good, the pre-show match. And then you had, you opened up the main show. I think how important was it for Dickinson, Chris Dickinson versus Drew Gulak to set that tone for the show?
It's funny because before We Care a Lot, the plan was to put Dickinson and Gulak on last as the headlining match of the show. But then after seeing the performance that Biff and Eddie put in, I wanted to make sure that they got that main event spot. But this isn't uncommon. A lot of times I will start our live events with what I perceive to be our biggest match, because then it sets the tone for everybody else. And it's like, okay, like this is what we just put on first. Like everybody else is going to have to work harder, or else you're going to get lost in the shuffle. I'm not of the mentality that you build towards the main event. I think every match should be the best possible match that you can put on, and if it is, then there's no such thing as crowd burnout. People will be up for it, and people will be on their feet, and people will be excited. I mean, I was just, as I was proofing the We Care a Lot DVD, which we had that incident at intermission that ended up stalling the show by almost an hour. We didn't get finished till almost 1 a.m. There were still people up on their feet, standing ovations, screaming, yelling. So if you're giving fans something to be excited about, they're going to keep that energy throughout the entire night. But being able to set the tone with Dickinson, who I think is the wrestler probably most synonymous with Beyond Wrestling, for better or for worse, over the last 4 years, he certainly, I think, has done the most, at least in the beginning, to elevate Beyond Wrestling, to make us a viable platform. And even though he only had a few words after the match, it was certainly a heartfelt.
Yeah, it was cool.
He meant every word that he said, and it's just, you know what I mean? Like, from being down in the trenches, wrestling in a garage in Ohio, to wrestling in a state-of-the-art nightclub in front of over 300 fans is just... It was never, you know what I mean? It was never the goal of Beyond Wrestling. It was never something that we were like, yes, one day this is what we're going to do. So the fact that it's gone this far is just like, wow, like, how far can we push this?
Yeah, I think that match just set the tone, and then, I think... the four-way tag will really carry, it was just so surprising and how, it was just like mind-blowing live because, I think Bill Carr and who's the other guy?
Bill Carr and Dan Barry, Team Tremendous.
Yeah, Team Tremendous, and, just the Minutemen, the other, I don't have the names in front of me, but I'd never seen those guys before, and they just delivered in that match. And, it kind of started out, it was, Team Tremendous interrogating one of the guys, and was, doing their shtick, and it was funny. And then all of a sudden it just went nuts, just the dive sequence. I mean, you know me, how many dive sequences have I seen over the course of the last 11 years or so?
Of course.
But, that when the guy hit he countered, the razor's edge off to the floor into a Americanrana on a car. Oh my God. It was just, and then, the big guy hit the dive over the top. Just a ridiculous match.
I mean, that's the reason that Beyond Wrestling exists. Cause honestly, like, especially, dude, like everybody on the scene is so athletic right now. Like, when you take a look at guys like ACH or AR Fox, like, they have sick physiques. And so you sort of expect that athleticism because, it comes along with the way that they look. And I think if you took a look, just based on looks alone, on all four of those tag teams, like, none of them, like, stand out as being, like, great physical specimens. So all of a sudden, like, you have these lowered expectations. But that's what Beyond Wrestling is about, is we want to try and give the platform to guys that, for whatever reason, haven't gotten a fair shake. If it's because they don't look as good as some of the other competitors. If they can still wrestle at that same caliber, then we're going to let them loose. And I think that the Minutemen, the Hoods, EYFBO, and Team Tremendous, I think those guys legitimately stole the show, which is incredible when you look on paper with all of the talent that we had. So that's the exact reason that Beyond Wrestling exists. And you know what? Like, that was the second match on the card. And usually the second match on the card is like the wind down match. Imagine if we were booking with that same mentality and we put restraints on those guys. It wouldn't have done them any favors.
But, in fairness, though, they did start the match with some, you kind of had that come down at the beginning where, Team Tremendous did the comedy, and it was fantastic. They were legitimately funny, and then they went into it. So it was, it was a crazy match, but at the same time, it was so different than the first match that it worked.
Sure, and that's one thing that I'm really proud of, is that our fans are wrestling fans, and we've been able to give them so many different styles of wrestling, and they're all so appreciative. And it's like, even if it's somebody new that they've never seen before, they're still willing to give them a chance. For a long time, it wasn't like that. As soon as a guy would make a debut for another organization, the crowd would instantly be shitting on him, and that he would have to work that much harder in order to be able to prove himself. I think we're really starting to see a change in the indies overall. I mean, if you take a look at the match that David Starr and JT Dunn had at the Tangle Web Show to kick off CZW, I've never seen two guys that are, considered to be unknowns to get over with the CZW crowd as fast as they did. So
that's a tough crowd.
Is that a testament to their ability, or is it a testament to the fact that independent wrestling in general is breeding better fans right now that are more passionate and more open-minded and just want to enjoy the show? Because, I mean, dude, for so long, people would just hate on everything. Like, no matter what you put out, it doesn't matter how awesome it is, like, it would always be like, oh, well, this was good, but it would have been better if they had more time, or it would have been better if they would have taken it home 5 minutes earlier, or it would have been better if they ran with this finish. It's like, we're starting to get away from that, and I do think that with Beyond Wrestling, like, we've got a little bit of something to do with it. I'm really happy with the fan base that we've assembled.
Yeah, the second half of the show, JT Dunn Anthony Stone, Biff Busick, you talked a little bit about putting the card together, but these matches actually naturally progressed into, Edwards and Busick, which was just an insane main event. Do you think, Dunn, Stone, and Busick were able to raise their stock as a result of those matches against, Gargano, then Fox, then Edwards?
Oh, yeah, without question. And, it's funny, too, talking about the second half of the card. The match that we ran coming back from intermission was Steen versus Masada. And you usually throw a popcorn match on. And honestly, that probably should have been the main event. And those guys did unbelievable. I can't believe Masada, with how hurt he is with his knee. You would have never known it. And I think, honestly, it sucks that his knee is hurt, but it only enhanced the match because the story that they told. Those guys are two of the very best. So I had my concerns. I had my doubts. Would my crew be able to top everything that had gone on earlier in the show and hang with these world travel competitors? And yes, they did. I think Anthony Stone was the only wrestler that defeated one of the outside competitors.
Right. Yeah.
And that, just, the reaction that he got was unbelievable. JT Dunn is really coming into his own right now, and he's somebody that when he debuted with Beyond Wrestling 2 years ago, it's not that I didn't see much in him, because I don't evaluate talent like that, but he wasn't somebody that also, I immediately had an idea that sprung to mind. It was we're going to let this kid keep coming to the tapings and see what develops, but it's not holy shit, I know exactly what I'm going to do with this guy. This is how we're going to position him. This is who we're going to put him against, and this is how he's going to be featured. Whereas,
right.
You see somebody like Biff Busick, and you're like, oh, automatically, if he wrestles X, Y, and Z guy, he's going to have sick matches. So JT Dunn has come so far. I've had the opportunity to travel with him more since he is local. And really pick his brain and find out a lot about his story. And it's a very interesting story, and it always surprises me when I come across guys that have had it really rough, and then it's they turn to wrestling as their sanctuary, and it's through wrestling they're able to improve their lives. Because I feel like wrestling ruins my life on a daily basis. But, and then with Anthony Stone and Fox, Stone had said for a year and a half, Fox is my dream opponent. Same thing with Dunn. Dunn had told me, for as long as I'd met him, Johnny Gargano was my dream opponent. And the same thing with Biff. And all three of those guys were always loyal to Beyond Wrestling. They always worked hard. But most importantly, they always delivered in the ring. So I figured what better time than Americanrana to give these guys the chance to go up against, I don't want to say they're idols, but certainly competitors that had a large influence over their careers. And, I mean, damn, dude, as good as JT Dunn and Gargano and Fox versus Anthony Stone was, Biff versus Edwards 2 was incredible. And I had honestly I had heard the rumors about Eddie Edwards, so I was okay, I thought when I had booked Americanrana, it was going to be one and done, and it was awesome that we had the opportunity to work with him for a week Carol out when Dickinson canceled. But I was just all right, after July, that's going to be it. He's going to WWE. And then, right there on the spot, I was look, man, we've got a show coming up in September. You have to come back. Yeah. So it's awesome that we're going to be able to put Biff and Eddie Edwards in the ring, again, at point of no return. Of course, this time they've been able to choose their partners, and Biff surprisingly choosing his top rival, not only at Beyond Wrestling, but across the scene, in Drew Gulak. And I think some people might have thought that Eddie Edwards is going to team with Davey Richards, but instead bringing in Roderick Strong, the Dojo Bros. So
yeah,
that is going to be a match.
And just the main event, I had my thoughts on it. I got chills. I went and stood by the ring, by ringside, and just what an atmosphere for that main event. I've never quite, I've been to the Ring of Honor shows. They have the guardrails there, the big Ring of Honor shows. I mean, you had fans literally surrounding the ring, just going crazy for this match. The second this show is awesome chant. The fans chanted for another match after the match was over, and this is after a 4-hour show.
Asking for an encore, that's a little ridiculous. I
mean, just to throw a couple more guys out here for us. It's just, what were your thoughts on that main event while it went? It was just, the atmosphere was so good. Busick is legit. And we know who Eddie Edwards is and what he can do. But, were you surprised at just how things just, the crowd was so good throughout, but it kind of carried to this climax in the end with that match.
Well, this is where I have to make an unfortunate yet shocking revelation. I didn't get to see that match. I was downstairs squaring up with Fed. That's when they wanted to do it. So I've only had the opportunity to see it on tape.
Okay.
And even on tape, I love the match. I felt like it was it more than delivered for what it needed to be as far as a main event, because they were worried, you know what I mean, in the back, like, oh my God, this card has been insane. This card has been extremely long. What are we going to do? But again, that goes back to just how passionate the fans are, and when there's that energy in the room, how much it propels the wrestlers forward. So, my favorite part of the show was when they played R. Kelly at the conclusion of the last match, but I wasn't there for that, so. But yeah, I mean, the whole show top to bottom, like, you know, I'm happy that we're finishing up production on DVD within the next couple of weeks. Like, you know, 2.5 months turnaround time is pretty good for us, because there were some shows that took us a lot longer to get out. So we're doing the best that we can to try and get the shows out quicker, to get them, you know, in fans' hands. And I think that once Americanrana, you know, another thing too is, like, I don't want to cut corners on the presentation of Americanrana. Like, I have a very specific vision for the DVD, and I want to make sure that it's executed. Not only did we do a 3-camera shoot, which most independent wrestling shows are a 2-camera shoot, so we do have 3-camera angles. We have replays, we have graphics, and then we have 3 commentary options. There's no commentaries. You can, you know, get a better feel for the vibe as it happened live at the Fett Music Ballroom. We have the option to listen to it with commentary from the wrestlers, who did that live up on the balcony. So like guys like Kevin Steen and Bryce Remsburg and Drew Gulak and Chris Dickinson and Gargano, doing commentary. I didn't even think that we were going to do that day of. And then, you know, I'm going to be providing my commentary too, which provides a different type of insight, giving better context, I think, to some of the matches based on the proceedings leading up to those bouts and, some of the fallout as well. So, I really want to make sure that not only do the matches deliver on DVD, but the quality of the release itself, people understand that, you know, we're taking our production very seriously.
Are you working on ways to, you know, it's with the way the turnaround time is going for some companies, you know, getting them out so quickly. I know you want to put a polish on, you know, something like these shows, but have you thought of different ways to speed up the process? Because, you know, I have people emailing me every week asking me when it's out. You know, you said the show is awesome. When's it out? When's it out? When's it out? Is it out yet? So,
you know, one thing that I'm starting to notice, especially on WSU, now that we're working with so many different distributors, is like it becomes confusing for fans to follow when a show is out, and I think that overall that sort of hurts its selling ability. So I think going forward, what we're going to do is we're going to get pre-sales up probably the week after the show, and we're going to make sure that the DVD comes out as quickly as it can. I am working with a different editor for We Care a Lot than the producer for Americanrana. Not to say that We Care a Lot isn't as important, but that's going to be like a test kind of to see what we can do in-house. Because right now the production is shared between Tanya Cornell, a.k.a. TC Tapes, who's in charge of all of the filming for the show. Yeah. She also cuts the angles together. So she gets me the footage. I wait on graphics from Nicholas K., who usually waits until photographs from the event have become available to incorporate. And then once I've got the footage, I add the replays, and I put the titles up, and I do like introduction screens, and then I record the commentary. For whatever reason, I'm ashamed to announce I've never learned how to actually press a DVD myself. So then all of that footage has to be sent to a fourth person, in Flip Kendrick out in Michigan, who then actually compiles the DVD and, you know, just some of the other artwork and stuff like that. So it's not an efficient process, and we are looking into different ways to certainly make that more efficient by perhaps, you know, limiting 1 or 2 of the people that are involved. Oh my God, I would love to eliminate myself from the process. You know what I mean? I got other things to deal with in editing. Like as somebody that I guess technically is looked at as a promoter, like I probably shouldn't be involved in the editing process at all. But I'm really happy that I get to be as close to the footage as I can, because it allows me to look at the wrestlers and evaluate their performances multiple times. It gives me a better idea how to use them.
Oh, Gabe watches all his shows 5 times, so you need to outdo him.
Well, then, I mean, it might be taking us a little bit longer to get our shows out, too, if that's the case. But
so we're looking at a couple weeks, probably, till this comes out?
Yeah, I mean, we promised that it would ship by the end of September, barring a catastrophe. It's definitely going to be shipping by the end of September.
All right, cool. Now, just to, you know, you want to build these shows in Providence. You know, how hard is it to man, you had all these positive feelings coming out of the show, but is it a balancing act not to get too overexcited about the way things work in order to focus on the next show? And
I don't know. You don't want to buy into your own bullshit too much, but at the same time, like, man, like, if you have a good day, like, just sit back, enjoy the moment. I mean, we have my parents on hand, because they run the kitchen at the shows, and like my dad pulled me aside at the end of the week, and like my dad hates wrestling, and he has literally been buzzing about it, like even to people where he works and stuff like that for the show in September, like telling me like, oh my god, like you got to see what my kid's up to. But I think it was like 5 or 6 days after the show, like he pulled me aside and was like, look, Andrew, I've never seen you as happy in your entire life, except when we took you to Disney World when you were 7 years old. And it's just like, I know how much this means to you, and I understand how hard, why you work so much on it now. Cause, dude, like, it's so weird. Like, obviously I have to hold down a day job, and then it's just like, I don't have much of a social life. Like, a lot of my free time is either spent on the road for my shows, other people's shows, or like at a computer, like promoting, editing. And so for somebody that doesn't understand what the payoff is, or can't envision what the payoff is, it's kind of like, what are you doing, like, wasting your time? Like, you're not making a lot of money on this. So for people that were there, that have followed me since I started in wrestling, to be there at FET, like, they're like, okay, like, this is the payoff. Like, we can understand the gratification that he takes in this and see why he works so hard on it. So yeah, man, like, without buying into my own bullshit too much, we killed it. We had one of the best shows of the year, without question. When it's out on DVD, I guess that's going to be up to other people to decide, but I think the big problem coming out of this is like, oh, now we have to top this? Like, I guess.
I guess before we go into Point of No Return, what are some of the biggest lessons you learned from Americanrana in terms of things you might change or do differently that you have taken into the build to the show coming up next weekend?
Sure. One thing that I mean, not from a promotional perspective, but at least from executing the event itself. Because I mean, dude, you got to realize, like, I'm in charge of every decision that gets made with Beyond Wrestling. Yeah. So, like, one of the decisions that we made had to do with the seating at the show, and I think that really the only negative feedback that we got coming out of the show was that some people didn't realize that they were going to have to be standing for it, and that there was limited stage seating. And I guess this was sort of complicated by the fact that while people were outside, some of the staff at FET told them that, like, it was first come, first served with the seating, so that if they were in the front of the line, they were guaranteed seating. And then what we did is we had sort of like a holding area in the second room, in the lounge they call it. And then so, like, people that entered the lounge first were last to exit the lounge, and so they weren't able to get stage seating. So, I didn't really know a more fair way to do it, but we've introduced VIP tickets, which actually have already sold out, for Point of No Return, to guarantee people stage seating, and just so they don't feel like they're getting ripped off. Well, like, we've added a lot of perks for it. Like, they're going to get into the building a half hour earlier. We're going to do a VIP meet and greet, and they're also going to get a voucher that they can use for the food or merchandise. So, certainly learned from that. And then I guess, another thing too, like, and this isn't dogging anybody, but like, I always thought that guys that quote unquote had buzz or like were named wrestlers, didn't move the needle. And I couldn't have been more wrong, because when you go back and look at a lot of the lineups that we had for our previous live events versus what we had for Americanrana, where we really loaded it up, it's like, it's not enough to just book a guy that has name value. You obviously have to use him in the right combination, in the way that he's featured. It has to make sense. So I think, we were successful in booking a smart show, but it's made me a lot more comfortable to be able to work with guys that I hadn't worked with before, who may have a much higher profile than I'm used to dealing with. And especially based on the professionalism and how easy it was to work with everybody. Like, yeah. I don't have a bad thing to say about anybody. Like, I hate to say it, like, a guy who's as scary as Masada, like, he's, you know what I mean? Like, he's not like that in person. And with that level of professionalism, it's like, okay, like, I understand why these guys charge this much money, because you really get what you pay for. And I think a lot of the guys are really good value. So I would, if somebody was starting a new promotion or was like, hey, we're thinking about bringing in Kevin Steen, like, I wouldn't have enough positive things to say. And I think some of those guys really went above and beyond, especially Kevin Steen, in promoting his appearance when he did the Kevin Steen show and featured footage from the event, and then went back and re-recorded a little segment to explain to people that we had our show available for pre-sale. He didn't need to do that, but he did that, and it means the world to me. So Those are really the two big things coming out of it. Like, obviously, it's just some of the logistical problems running the venue for the first time, but also, like, I fully understand the scope of, like, why certain guys in wrestling are elevated the way that they are. And hopefully we can use Beyond Wrestling as a platform to create more of those guys. You know what I mean? I would love nothing more than for 2 years from now, Anthony Stone, JT Dunn, and Biff Busick to be able to have that same, commanding drawing power the way that a Colt Cabana or a Johnny Gargano does.
Are you happy with how the pre-sales for the second show? What's your goal for Point of No Return? Do you think you guys can get to the point where you fill that venue around 400 fans?
I anticipate a drop off for September. One, I feel like the first time you run a new building is usually when you draw best, because people are kind of like, oh, this may be the only time this happens. And now that people know that we have a September date, like, you got to think there's a few people that are like, I'll catch the next one. On top of that, I don't know how much of a conflict this is, but WWE's got their pay-per-view that night, so maybe there's like a handful of people. So I don't anticipate that we're going to draw as well for September as we did for July. I've kind of resigned myself to this fact automatically. But what I would like to do is get to a point where we're doing well enough that the club wants us to run more frequently. And then I think at that point, it's like, if we can set regular dates months in advance that people can plan around. Take a look at CZW. Like, they have that diehard fan base of, like 250 fans that are at every show, regardless of what the card is, because they know, okay, the second Saturday of every month is when I need to be there. And I think long term for Beyond Wrestling, as long as we continue to grow our relationship with Fet Music, that's what I would like to get to. For Point of No Return, I've used a similar formula for what we use for Americanrana in terms of putting the card together. Just sort of replacing some of the variables. Like, we've got another 4 corner tag team match on this upcoming show, but instead of having Team Tremendous and EYFBO involved, we have ACH, AR Fox, Black Baron, and Shinron. So, the real challenge is going to be...
Go ahead. Sorry.
All right. The real challenge is going to be November, because November I plan on putting together a drastically different card than anybody has ever seen. And so, if we do well enough in September and well enough in November, I think that'll give us the leverage that we need to try and run even more events starting in 2014. That's my long-term goal.
Were you happy with the pre-sales for the Americanrana so far and that end of things?
Oh yeah, dude, like for pre-sales for the pre-sales, the total number of pre-sales that we ended up doing for Americanrana turned out to be 199, which is like, it's so funny. It's like, oh man, like, it would have been nice to get that one more to do 200, but like, that's double what our highest draw ever was. So it's like, how, you know what I mean? It's like, even if we're not, even if we hadn't made our money back on the show, like, at least it was like, oh wow, like, we've really got people's attention. So far, I'm pretty happy with what we've got going on for Point of No Return. I haven't had time to compare our numbers right now with what we ended up doing for Americanrana, but I think that we're on par, if not a little bit ahead. So, I don't know. Another thing that's really cool, too, is that when we did, dude, before, when we're doing shows on Knights of Columbus, it's like, yeah, you like wrestling, like, as a wrestler, but you might not share it with your friends and family because it's like, okay, I'm wrestling in a stupid Knights of Columbus, like, it's not that cool.
Yeah.
And for Americanrana, like, wrestling was cool. Like, the amount of people that have reached out to me locally that always used to dog Beyond Wrestling, that want to get on our cards now because wrestling is cool, and then they're willing to get more involved, too. And it's like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm proud of what we did today. Like, I really want my friends and family to come see this. I think a good example of that is Biff Busick, who keeps his wrestling life very separate and very private from his personal life. But he had a lot of people in attendance at Americanrana, and there will probably be more people that know him coming to support at Point of No Return, because it's like, okay, like, people don't think that I'm just rolling around, like, with dudes in my underwear. Like, people understand that this is, like, a legitimate show.
Yeah, it's not just, a small show, 50 fans, you do your match, and you go home.
So it's cool. It's cool that we really started to build up that local following. We just timing wise, like, the Providence Kickball League has like their final set of games today. Like, it would have been awesome to get involved with them, but a lot of our local wrestlers are booked for Wrestle Jam in Connecticut, so logistically we weren't able to work that out. I wanted to do something with the Providence Roller Derby next weekend, but I actually realized I this is so stupid on my part. I'm booked Friday and Saturday for another organization and then CZW. So, like, I'm not going to be around locally for that final push. So we haven't been able to link up with as many organizations. And plus, like, FET has a lot more shows now in September than they did in July. Not to say that they haven't been doing their part as well, but, we're competing with a lot. So,
yeah.
But then again, we've also started doing these monthly Church of Providence shows. So that's another 150 people that had no idea about Beyond Wrestling, that came to see a hip-hop show, and instead they see, one of their rappers punking out Biff Busick, and then it's like, oh, man, like, he slapped him in the face so hard, like, how could he fake that? Like, this shit's real. Like, I gotta come check out this show now.
Yeah, I know it's kind of to be determined, but do you think that your Church of Providence involvement is going to help these live shows? Maybe you get 10 people, then you get 20 people. You know what I mean? In terms of building.
Long term, absolutely.
Yeah.
We actually just today confirmed with Sage Francis he's going to be appearing on our show next weekend, which Sage has a huge following internationally, but he's also like really well known locally, and so it's like for the wrestling audience, like, I don't know, maybe 10% of wrestling fans know who Sage Francis is. For those 10%, like, Beyond Wrestling probably seems a lot cooler than it was. It's like, oh shit, they're working with Sage. For the people that don't know, it's not going to move the needle. But again, like, being able to work with guys that have had such a hand in the music industry for the last 15, 20 years, there's certainly going to be a lot of other perks that come along with that long term. Like, just because something doesn't necessarily turn into more fans showing up at your live events doesn't mean it's not helping you grow as an organization. So I'm keeping all options open in terms of what we can do to grow the Beyond Wrestling brand. But another thing that I'm really surprised about with Americanrana is, like, I always thought that, like, our YouTube was going to be, like, our number one, like, driving thing at all times. And after Americanrana, I really see the potential in being able to grow Beyond Wrestling from a live event perspective. Like, yeah, maybe we could get to the point where we're drawing 400 people and have to start turning people away. Like, maybe we are going to start running monthly, in which case, like, wow, that all of a sudden becomes a much bigger source of revenue than what we were getting from YouTube, even though that's still growing.
Yeah. All right, so next Sunday, September 15th, Point of No Return. I guess, doors open 3:30 at FET Music, Providence, Rhode Island. I guess, first of all, how did you go about putting together a new mix of, known indie names with local guys, or not local guys, but, local and members of your core roster this time around?
Sure. Well, I mean, I thought that, JT Dunn, Anthony Stone, Biff Busick, they all got a fair shot at Americanrana, and so I wanted to try and give other wrestlers on the roster an opportunity. It's like a sink or swim opportunity. So two of the matches that we have on the card that sort of fit into that category is we have Matt Taven versus Aaron Epic, which obviously Aaron Epic, for almost the entire duration that he was in Beyond Wrestling, was a tag team wrestler with Sugar Dunkerton, and that chapter has sort of closed, at least in Beyond Wrestling. So it's time for Epic to prove himself once again as a singles guy. I mean, Matt Taven, fans in New England know him. Obviously, fans nationally are starting to know him as the ROH television champion. That's going to be a huge test for Epic. And, Chuck Taylor is going to be wrestling Corvus. Corvus has not always gotten the best reception from our fans, but he's been working extensively, let's say with the powers that be, with some of the Wrestling Is organizations to really further coordinate what he's doing. And I feel like he's really come into his own. And going up against Chuck Taylor is going to be a huge test, because if Corvus doesn't get a good reaction against Chuck Taylor, he's not going to get a good reaction against anybody. So that's really a huge high-profile match for Corvus, who wasn't even featured on the last Beyond Wrestling Live event.
Right.
We have Kevin Steen going up against Dickinson. I didn't even think that Steen was originally going to be involved with Point of No Return, but after the reception that he got from the fans, there's no way that we couldn't bring him back. Like, Steen's the top guy on the indies right now, bar none. And we're going to do everything in our power to work with him as much as we can. And him and Dickinson kind of hit it off, so it's kind of like, that's a weird reason to put two guys together. You know what I mean? But once the bell sounds, all bets are off. So I'm really interested in seeing, because Dickinson is extremely strong. Probably as strong as Michael Elgin, maybe even a little bit stronger. I guess we'll find out.
Don't let Michael hear that.
And definitely don't let Elgin hear that, because he's going to be on the show wrestling JT Dunn. And after he's done with JT Dunn, he might come after me.
You're gonna get Dunn killed.
No, but Elgin is the first time we've been able to work with him. He was actually the first wrestler that we were able to secure for this date, and I mean, it's just like, unbreakable Michael Elgin, more like unstoppable Michael Elgin. Like, this guy's probably the top wrestler of 2013.
He is the best wrestler on the independent scene right now.
So, I mean, there you have it. I mean, you probably watch more wrestling than 95% of the people that are out there. So if that's your endorsement for Michael Elgin, I really liked what I saw out of JT Dunn against Johnny Gargano, but he didn't walk away with the victory. And I don't necessarily like Dunn's chances against Elgin. But with that said, I think it's another important test for him to be able to sort of see how he's coming along as a wrestler. And if there's anybody that's going to be able to keep up with the combinations from Elgin, it's going to be Dunn. And Dunn's going to have to use his speed to try and stay one step ahead of Elgin, which is, as big and as powerful as Elgin is, like, he's really agile too. So,
yeah,
I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see that match. That to me is the type of match that could steal the show.
It really is a great, just the styles I think will mesh very well, because I've seen Elgin match up with guys similar to Dunn and have some really, like ACH, for example. Someone who's a little bit similar to Dunn. Just awesome match they had in Ring of Honor earlier this year. So I think that the formula is definitely there for this to turn out very well.
And then we've got Nicholas K versus Anthony Stone, which these guys have had issues back and forth for the last 4 years. This is an interesting match because these are two quote unquote homegrown guys that are really being thrust into a big spotlight. So to me, this is another sink or swim match. Nicholas K wasn't featured on Americanrana in a wrestling capacity, and Anthony Stone did great. So this is going to be a big test for these guys, and there's a stipulation that's yet to be determined for this match. So I think that it's really going to help these guys stand out a lot on the card. But if anything, it's going to put an even bigger spotlight on them, which is they're really going to have to elevate their game if they're going to want to hang.
Did he kidnap Anthony Stone after that? I got kind of swept away.
He did kidnap Anthony Stone.
I saw him walking away with him over his shoulder.
Yeah, no, he released this weird video message on our YouTube channel too. I guess he filmed it right afterwards. I don't know, man. Anthony Stone, Nicholas K, Eric Corvus, all three of them have a very bizarre relationship. So, let's put him in the ring. Let him work it out. I will say this: the last time that Anthony Stone had a personal issue with one of the wrestlers on the roster was Corvus, and it was at the We Care a Lot event. He threw him through a wall and then gave him a concussion. And Nicholas K also got involved in that match, and he kicked him so hard that his arm was numb for a week. So, you do not want to get personal with Anthony Stone, in any capacity, and that is what Nicholas K has done. So it's like, you got a hot-tempered Portuguese that's just going to be looking to whoop your ass. And then I did you a favor. I took all of your favorite wrestlers. I put them all in one match for you.
Yeah, I know. I saw that.
Johnny Cocktrung versus Dan Barry versus Jaka versus Usurper versus, I don't know. He might be another couple of your favorites that might be rolling around that day that might get thrown into the mix there. But it's good. It's good to have a totally different contrast. I mean, all those guys are very lighthearted. So
Dan. So.
That should be a fun match. I thought Jaka
was good against Colt though.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, this match was originally supposed to be Team Tremendous versus Jaka and Usurper, since Jaka and Usurper have been teaming a little bit in some of the other organizations. But Bill Carr, unfortunately, unable to attend the show. So, we called on the former number one ranked Johnny Cockstrong to come step up, change the format of the match a little bit. So it's going to change the dynamic of the match, but I think it's going to be good for a lot of laughs. And then, I don't know what we're thinking with this match. This tag team scramble is just absolutely crazy. Black Baron and AR Fox teamed for us in a studio taping back in July, which that match will be up at youtube.com/BeyondWrestling in the next couple of weeks. They wrestled Worst Case Scenario, another tag team from the WWA4 school out of Atlanta. And it was just 35 minutes of just the craziest shit you've ever seen. So for AR Fox and Black Baron to be teaming once again, okay, that's crazy enough as it is. But then, when you have ACH and Shinron, who are both, these two extremely athletic, gymnast-style wrestlers that have this Dragon Ball Z influence, okay, it's right there, then it's okay, now you've just taken it to a next level. But then you got the Minutemen and the Hoods, who have been feuding on and off in New England for, the last 15 years. Two teams that know each other so well and were so crazy in the tag team four-way in the previous show. Neither of those teams were involved with the fall. Team Tremendous was involved with the fall. So they were elevated. Team Tremendous won that match, so we wanted to elevate them to a more high-profile tag team match. Again, unfortunately, Bill Carr, couldn't compete on this show. But EYFBO, they lost the match. They're not on this card. And with this format, with being one fall to a finish, I don't know, man. This is one of those matches where it's like, oh man, I know this looks awesome on paper. Like, I'm sure the fans really want to see it, but I'll probably be like pacing back and forth, like by the entrance to the building, or like in the bathroom, like getting something to drink. Like, oh my god, like these guys are too crazy. Like, I can't watch this. Somebody's gonna get hurt.
Yeah, I would have thrown money at EFBYO after that match.
Yeah, and
I would have just thrown money at him.
And then the main event. We've got Eddie Edwards and Roderick Strong, the Dojo Bros, going up against Biff Busick and Drew Gulak in the next chapter of the unexpected rivalry between Biff Busick and Eddie Edwards. And so far they split the series one apiece. Biff won the match at We Care a Lot. Eddie won the match at Americanrana. And I wanted to try and find a stipulation where we could sort of change up the format a little bit, but keep it true to the wrestling. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't a blood feud. There's no personal issue between these guys. It's all about the competition. So, one of the ideas that was floating around in my head was an Iron Man match, because at least it guarantees that they're going to be wrestling for an extremely long period of time, and they're both well-conditioned athletes. But then, I don't know, there's certain expectations that come along with an Iron Man match that I don't necessarily like. And I didn't think this was the type of stipulation where we should make it like a tables match or a cage match. So by allowing them to call on their partners, and I think they did a tremendous job. I mean, dude, like Drew Gulak, current CZW World Champion, like in the next 6 months, we're going to be looking at a drastically different CZW, and that's because Drew Gulak is going to be at the helm of that. Roderick Strong, I mean, I grew up watching Roderick Strong, I'm 28 years old. Like, I didn't have access to ECW when I was growing up. Like, Ring of Honor is what made me a fan of wrestling. So, I've been following Roderick Strong for the last decade. To be able to finally work with him is a dream come true. And him and Eddie, I think, are the best tag team in the world. So, there you have it. There's a match.
Now, if, we keep hearing Eddie Edwards might sign with WWE, he did the training camp at the end of the last month. If this is it, this part 3 match, Edwards and Strong against Busick and Gulak, are you happy with that? Are you holding out hope for one more singles match?
I'm certainly holding out hope for one more singles match. Whether or not that's something we'll be able to pull the trigger on, I don't know. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's up to Vince. It's not up to me. I'm one of the little guys. Dude, if it was up to me, I would have Eddie Edwards on every single show going forward for the rest of Beyond Wrestling. Like, I would probably try and figure out ways to work him into WSU if I could. You know what I mean? Like, he's so good. And, I don't know, man. I don't have enough good things to say about Eddie Edwards. Like, I remember watching him in New England when he had, like, the braided hair, and everybody was always like, holy shit, this guy is going to be something special. And he's one of those competitors that's never plateaued. Like, every time you see him, he's better. And it gets to the point where it's like, oh my god, like, how much better can this guy get? Like, are you serious?
I guess, like, when I saw him debut in Ring of Honor, tagging a lot with Jason Blade, I was like, the braids, I was like, oh, who the hell is this guy? Now he's like one of my favorite guys to watch.
But people in New England always said that he was going to be something special, and you know what I mean. Like, it's not like he hasn't worked for everything that he's gotten. I mean, he's so tough. I mean, I like the whole thing with him breaking his arm and then still doing the ladder match the next day. I mean, that guy was made after that.
If you want to hear about all this, the Kevin Steen show with Eddie Edwards, just all about the stuff we're talking about, him coming up in New England, and they even have pictures of him with his braids when his hair was short, and that Steen had inserted into the picture.
I'm gonna have to check that out before next weekend, then, so I can bust.
Oh, it's so funny. Steen got a picture of it, like, just. He just looks ridiculous. I hate to say it, but he just looks.
But I mean, if Eddie and Roddy and some of the other guys are no longer available going forward, I mean, that's an opportunity for our guys to be able to step up. Guys like JT Dunn and Anthony Stone and Biff Busick to step up and try and take those headlining roles. And there's plenty of other wrestlers, because I think the scene is better now than it ever has been before. So yeah. I hope that these shows are successful. One of my biggest things that I regret is, like, that I can't run more shows because there's so many guys that I want to work with that I have, specific match ideas for that nobody else has pulled the trigger on. Like, for instance, if we were running, like, I would love to work with Drake Younger. Like, I will never let up the fact that we had the opportunity to work with Drake Younger right at the start of Beyond Wrestling. And, just financially, we weren't in a situation where we were able to accommodate him. And all these years later, I would love to be able to bring him out from California and be able to work with him. So there's tons and tons and tons and tons of awesome dudes. The scene is better now than it ever has been before. So I mean, if these guys are able to go to WWE and make a sick payday and elevate themselves even further, whether they end up like CM Punk, like a millionaire in WWE, or even if they have a short stint and are able to come back to the indies with a higher profile to further elevate themselves, like everybody, that we work, I shouldn't say everybody, but like the guys like Eddie Edwards and Roderick Strong and Davey Richards, like certainly deserve, after all the hard work that they put on the indies, to at least get that moment to be able to sign that contract. Cause I mean, think about it too. Like the scene has changed so much. Like I don't think people realize like how much Punk did to really like blow the doors open and like bridge the gap between the indies and WWE. There's so many guys that, it was always kind of like, oh man, do you think he'll get signed? Do you think he'll get signed? And it's like, oh, like finally it's going to sort of pay off. And I mean, how many guys can you think of like from the original Ring of Honor era that, were awesome that never got a fair shake in WWE? Like it's probably less than you can count on one hand.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the. I mean, there's there's two guys from the original. Basically, it's Punk and Dragon.
Right, but I mean, like guys that for whatever reason haven't got a shot in WWE. Like everybody that came up, either like guys like Hero, guys like Claudio. I mean, Low-Ki was there, Cabana was there. At least it's the type of situation now where like if you pay your dues on the indies, like. Not that it's guaranteed that it's going to pay off. Obviously, there's no guarantees in wrestling, but you've got a better shot now of making it than ever before.
Yeah, I'm worried a little bit about the new performance center and some of their goals, but I just don't see how they could turn down these guys when they're becoming core parts of their roster up and down the card.
I mean, if you're that good, they're going to, what I mean? Like, whatever their plans are, like, they have no choice. I don't think anybody, like, I honestly thought that, like, Danielson's career peaked when he got the world title right around the time that, he was feuding with Big Show and Henry.
Yeah.
And then did the match with Sheamus, and then he lost it, and I was like, all right, like, that's the best that it's ever going to get for him. And it's like, man, like, no, this guy is so good. They have no choice but to make him the focal point of every show going forward. And that's, it's like, oh, let's cool him down. Let's put him with Kane in a tag team. It's like, no, too bad. Like now that's the hottest act on the show. We have no choice but to make Danielson the star. Cause he's a star. And guys like Generico, are that good. And hopefully some of these guys that might not quote unquote have the look, which I think is cool too, that they've taken some of these, elements that fans always talk about, whether or not they're perceived or real, and they've sort of, incorporated them into some of the storytelling elements now. Generico's one of the guys that may not have the look, but it sounds like he's tearing it up in NXT. Like, can't wait for him to be on TV.
He just debuted in Montreal last night at a house show.
Awesome.
Beat Cesaro. So that was
awesome.
Pretty cool. Yeah. So that was pretty fun to see that last night.
So, I mean, that's what Beyond Wrestling, that's sort of to tie it back to us, like, that's sort of the goal is like, we want to try and create the next crop of guys that can be that Eddie Edwards, that can be that Davey Richards, where, they were just down at WWE for a week getting scouted. Are they going to get signed? Like, I want to be able to give the guys the tools to be able to get there. So,
yeah, and I do want to say, Gulak has been so good this year when I've seen him in the ring, and Busick. So, I mean, if you haven't seen these guys before, this is a chance, and I got a chance to meet Gulak at the Wrestling is Art show in August, and, like, he was, like, the nicest guy I've met in wrestling, besides you. But yeah, it's very, it's a good chance. I think it's a good chance for people to see talent on the rise. You've got, two of my top 5 rising indie stars and one, tagging together, two of the top 3 guys I had on my list in the newsletter a few weeks ago. So, I mean, this is a chance for people in the New England area, to go ahead and make that trip to Providence and, just see these guys go against two of the very best in Eddie Edwards and Roderick Strong, the Dojo Bros, I mean, this is just, I think this match has tremendous potential.
And, talking about breaking out more guys, the plan for November is to run the tournament for tomorrow too, which, was originally scheduled for last year. And then around the time that Charade got hurt, we pushed it back, so that we could run a charity event for him. And then, when we were supposed to be running it in December, we got hit with a snowstorm. And so we postponed it indefinitely. But even though it's been 2 years since the first tournament for tomorrow, the plan for November is to run a tournament for tomorrow too. And that is going to be completely dedicated to elevating new guys. And as I'm starting to put the lineup together, I'm really looking outside of Beyond Wrestling to find guys that maybe nobody has ever heard of. But, for whatever reason, if I've come across their work and see that they can go. Because, that's how I felt it was with the NYWC guys at the tapings.
Right.
Last weekend. It was I hadn't heard of these guys. But man, some of them are really good. And that just goes to say how good the scene is right now. So, we want to use our platform to the best of our ability to spotlight, underlooked and, underlooked and underutilized. Cause dude, there's so many good wrestlers out there and it just sucks. It seems like the amount of high profile places to work, is diminishing by the day.
But I think if people get to see this show, I mean, just for example, before I just wanted to mention before we wrap up, I saw Black Baron at Armory Amore, and they had that unfortunate incident with Charade, but he was really good, and this is another chance for him to team with AR Fox, ACH and Shinron, and the Minutemen and the Hoods, they tore it up once, so why couldn't they do it again with these two teams? But a guy like Black Baron has a chance in this. I think the four-way match gives a lot of guys a chance to kind of stand out and kind of get that first step moving forward. So hopefully for someone like Black Baron, he's a big bruiser. Big guy. I was impressed with him when I saw him against Charade, so hopefully he gets a chance to kind of show what he can do as well.
I mean, that's what that match is designed to do, so.
Yeah, so that's next Sunday,
September 15th at the Fet Music Ballroom in the Oneyville neighborhood of Providence, Rhode Island. Tickets are $15 ahead of time at lookmonofans.com if you go to the event section, or if you go to, if you search out the Point of No Return event page on Facebook, there's also a link in order to, to purchase tickets there. But they're $15 in advance, $20 day of show, and, we appreciate the extra money, but it's certainly better for us to know how many, fans to expect. So I certainly encourage everybody to get their tickets ahead of time. Plus, you'll save a little bit of money if you want to take a look at the lineup and if there's any changes going into the show. Facebook.com/Beyond Wrestling is the best way to follow everything. I'm going to be uploading some content from We Care a Lot as well as Americanrana this week at youtube.com/Beyond Wrestling, which of course I always encourage everybody. Please subscribe. We put up tons and tons and tons of free content every week. We're probably producing more independent wrestling content in the United States than anybody except for Ring of Honor right now. So, if you hadn't heard of a guy, check, set aside 12 minutes, check out one of his matches. You might be really impressed with what you see, and hopefully he'll make you a fan. So,
yeah, and if you like the channel, what's it called? Subscribe. I'm sorry, subscribe.
Yeah. Just subscribe. You click a button, and then every time we upload a video, it shows up in your feed. So,
and you get an email. I was YouTube stupid, I guess is the way to put it. So I would see you post links, and then I just click on the link, and then I'd miss a bunch of stuff, and then I'd see you post something on Twitter, and then I just went, because the Torch actually ended up getting a YouTube channel, so I went there and filled in my subscribed, and now I get, every time you guys drop something, I get an email. So it's pretty cool if you just get an email and it says what the match is that went up, so it's a good way to, if you want to watch some content, what's coming out.
Yep. And then, at Beyond Wrestling, both on Twitter. We're trying to get into Instagram more too, which is a pretty solid platform. So, we've got tons of social media out there, the pioneers in social media and independent wrestling. And for all of the latest updates going into Point of No Return, I'm really, really happy with the lineup. We got a few surprises up our sleeves per usual. Come hungry. That's super important. I can't believe that we didn't dedicate more time talking about the concessions, but Championship Melt actually sold out last time. They were, after intermission, they had run out of all of the stock that they had on their truck, so they were pleased as punch, and I think my mom got a little bit jealous because she's adding some more menu items to our indoor kitchen at Point of No Return, including meatballs and sausage and pepper. So come hungry, bring cash. Come ready to have the time of your life, because that's what we're striving for.
Yeah, it's the Fett Music. If you want to do the VIP parking, it's a good option down there. Like $10, you can just park right next to the venue. And the Championship Melt, and you got food and drink inside the venue. It's pretty cool setup. There's a hall for wrestlers merchandise, so the building itself is very nice inside.
I think our tickets are too cheap too. Like, if you were to go see this lineup presented by any other company, they'd probably be charging you like $30 or $40. So I think that the fact that we're doing the best to our ability to keep ticket prices down too. We want to share. We like what we do. We want to share it with as many people as possible. End of story.
Yeah, I kind of out of left. How did it turn out on tape? The look of the venue.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it because it's crazy, because it's like everywhere you look, there's people surrounding the ring, and then it's like you cut to the next angle, and it's like, oh my God, there's people that have filled up this stage, and then it's like you take a wide angle, and it's like, oh my God, like there are people surrounding the ring area on 3 sides because of this balcony. It looks crazy. It really, when we looked at Americanrana, in my mind, I was like, this is kind of like a PWG lineup where we've got a mix of locals with name guys with a WXW Germany environment. But we have to figure out a way not to lose our own identity. And, we didn't. Mission accomplished.
It's cool, though, because the wrestlers were down there at times, too, during the matches. Yeah, kind of like the Beyond thing.
And that's the thing, you know what I mean? So we want to make it as interactive as possible. We want to make sure that all of the wrestlers are there to watch the matches. And, they're there to police themselves and police the fans as well. Like, they have to, sort of double as security, like if somebody's going to fall out of the ring, like to make sure that they're not landing on a fan. Because we want the fans to get as close as possible.
Yeah.
And we do have a couple fan contests scheduled for Point of No Return, too. I mean, we bill these shows as being the most interactive pro wrestling on the planet. And we have to strive to meet that promise.
Are you in the twerking contest?
No, I wanted to make it extremely sexist to try and get some buzz. Only men can enter the eating contest, and only girls can enter the twerking contest. But I don't think anybody's offended by this. Like, I think people don't care. So,
what's the old Married with Children? No, ma'am, or whatever it was.
Oh yeah. No, we've got like 150 people that we have like 150 people that want to enter the eating contest, and then just one girl that this guy keeps posting pictures of his girlfriend's ass all over our social media and tagging all of our wrestlers. Like, she's the only one that wants to enter the twerking contest. So,
what a nice boyfriend.
Dude, that's what I'm saying, but
that would get most guys' nuts cut off.
I mean, whatever works, man. He had Cabana sign this girl's boobs at the last.
I saw that. Gee. Then I saw a hideous picture of Cabana signing a very large woman somewhere else.
Sweet. Hey, we'll take all types. You got $15, come see our show.
Cult does not discriminate when it comes to signing breasts.
Oh, he doesn't.
All right. Well, I know you got a lot of work to do today, so
I get the rest of the flyers out. So
lookmanofans.com for ticket information. September 15th, 3:30 doors. Tickets at lookmanofans.com. That's at Fett Music. Anything else before we sign off?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. Definitely thanks again for taking the time to do this podcast. I mean, obviously, it's cool. It's cool that you're local too and are going to be able to check it out. Oh, hopefully, right?
Hopefully,
are you there?
Yeah.
Hopefully, because I'd love to get another live report from you. I don't know, man. Beyond Wrestling. Let's see how far we can push this. It's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah. A great start, and hopefully the momentum can continue this next weekend.
Yeah, now here's my hard sell. If you're within driving distance to Providence, Rhode Island, and you're listening to this podcast, like, put off whatever else you're doing, because if you're not there, you're gonna regret having to hear about it after the fact. You wouldn't believe how many people contacted me about Americanrana afterwards, just asking questions, and it's like, I don't have the time to answer all these questions, and I'm not gonna be able to do it justice. Like, even though we just talked about the show for an hour and a half, like, it pales in comparison to actually being there. And, to set aside $15 in an afternoon to have one of the most Oh God, I see. I can't even come up with a word for it. Again, like I want to go back to special or magical or unique, but it's just like that is so cliched. Like
it's a great atmosphere.
It's an unprecedented wrestling experience. You'll never experience anything like it in your entire life. So, if you consider yourself a wrestling fan and you live in New England, definitely make it a point to come to the show. And if for some reason it's out of your range, it's not something you can do, please make it a point when the show is available on DVD to pick it up. So that's my hard sell.
Yeah, what?
I said, do you love it? Do you love my hard sell? It was pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Had a strand of Gabe in you there.
All right, I think I gotta clock out.
All right, yeah. If you go back to this, Torch VIP members can go back to the site, and I have 2 live reviews up. That's how much I like the show that I worked 2 of them. So go back to the site, check out around July 27th. I have one up on the 27th. I put up another one on the 28th to get an idea about Americanrana, and just if you can go to the show, just go to the show. And I don't say that about a lot of shows, but this is this is well worth taking 3-4 hours out of your life to go and see a show on a Sunday. So I guess we'll wrap it up there. So for
Thank
Drew,
you.
yeah, no problem, and good luck next weekend. So for Drew, this is Torch columnist Sean Radican signing off.